Hey everyone, it's Sharon. We are discussing trauma related behaviors this month. And last week, I did food issues. Today, we're going to talk about executive functioning issues. And then we're going to continue with substance abuse and sexualized behaviors for the next 2 weeks. All right, let me share my screen. All right. So executive functioning. Executive functioning is that higher functioning thoughts that allow us to think logically, to organize, strategize, make plan ahead, remember details, all of those things. This is a function that increases as we get older. So even at birth, we start developing some of these skills, but we will not see full executive functioning actually develop until we're 25. That's something new. We used to consider, us adults at 18. And I think back before we had colleges and stuff like that, when you really basically you graduated from high school, if you even went to high school and you were working, you we did develop earlier. And now, because we have our kids home longer, all of that, our executive functioning actually develops later in life. It does bring up some interesting issues around the ages when kids can be recruited for war, things like that, that we really haven't adjusted. When you think about it, we're letting them drive at 16 and their brain's not fully developed until 25. That's a long time to be letting them drive. There's a lot of things that we haven't shifted because of this executive functioning. But just know that it is something that slowly develops, that we can build the skills, but it may not be completely developed until they're 25. And that can be even later for children with trauma because obviously their brains are developing slower. But some of the things that executive functioning issues affect is things like inhibition, so low impulse control, making transitions, what we call shifting, initiation, being able to work independently or even be able to begin a project independently. Working memory, so holding information in our minds, like I said, remembering details is one of those things that we develop. Planning and organization, even imposing order in like their play spaces, like not being able to do that. And then self monitoring, understanding how their own actions are affecting others. Are they not good or bad, but appropriate or inappropriate? Those are all things that slowly develop through executive functioning. In a child with no trauma, even though it's not fully developed until 25, we should start seeing some of these skills really starting in early teens, and then by 17, 18, maybe 20, really starting to show the ability to do some of these things on their own. Um, so then a child with trauma, that can be even later. One of the things that you may not be aware of is that the federal government has increased the age limit for support for children who are moving out of foster care. So state by state can make this choice, like Indiana has. They can continue to receive funds up until 26. And like in Indiana, we call that collaborative care. The children in Indiana who want to participate in collaborative care have to be working or going to school at least half time, but it allows them to continue receiving aid from the state while they're going through this executive functioning period. Some of the states do not do this. They have chosen not to continue it until 26. They like stop it at 21 or 23. But even anything after 18 is going to help the kids. They realized that trying to stop aid at 18 did not make sense when they were still developing these executive functioning skills. All right, so what do we do with these executive functioning skills? How do we help build them? So, ways to strengthen their executive functioning skills, and again, you can do this from early on and all the way through. Children who have a low inhibition are very impulsive. Can maybe get them fidget toys to occupy their hands so that they can focus. You'll see this with ADHD kids too. It's a little hard sometimes to differentiate between the two, but executive functioning issues will not respond to medication again. So if a child is on an ADHD med and is still showing issues with impulse control, they probably aren't ADHD. They probably have just some low executive functioning skills. And so trying to strategize, you may need to have some help with a counselor or something, but just find strategies that work. So things that can occupy their hands so their mind can focus. Other things that you might think about is like I always doodled, or I used to take notes in school, just never read them, but I would take the notes because it would keep my mind engaged. Otherwise, my mind focuses, wanders. I'm not an auditory learner. So if I didn't see something in front of me, it was very hard for me to focus. So I would have to like doodle. So things like that. Sometimes kids have to have music. So having headphones where they can listen to music, or I have TV shows on the background because I can tune out the words, but the sound just kind of keeps me moving. Shifting. So again, this can come up with children with autism and ADHD, but it also could be a symptom of executive functioning issues, but going from one transition to another. So we've talked about this before, having visual calendars, doing something which would help them know what's coming ahead. So making sure you say, all right, dinner's in 10 minutes, start cleaning up your toys, or setting a timer. All of those things will help with those transitions. Never ever tell a child, all right, we got to go now, because they can't do it. They can't make that shift, especially if they have ADHD, autism, or executive functioning issues. So giving them those warnings, letting them know ahead of time, reinforcing. So if they try and say, you say dinner is in 10 minutes, get to a safe point in your game, and they don't do it, turn off the game. They'll learn. It's hard and they may throw a tantrum, but just really reinforcing what you're saying and then being consistent. So always give that warning. Never say, hey, it's time for dinner, turn off your game. Well, kids, if they're hyper focused, they want to get to that safe point. So give them that chance to get to that safe point. For both initiation and working memory, those both go together. Initiation, remember, is starting tasks. Working memory is remembering the details of tasks. We've talked about this with other things as well. Sorry, we're getting a delivery. Break those tasks into smaller steps. We talked about this, I think, a couple of weeks ago. Having them break those tasks into smaller steps, helping them with the first step, talking them through those steps. I think I used the example of loading a dishwasher. Do the silverware first, then the plates, then the cups and the top shelf. Breaking them down like that helps, and then as they repeat tasks, they'll start to remember. But you may have to work with them for a little bit. Initiation can be really hard. So you'll see this a lot in school assignments. They don't know where to start. Writing a story can be really hard for a kid who has executive functioning issues because they don't know where to start. I used to, when I would have to write papers or stuff for school, I actually started in the middle, and I would go back and do my first paragraph or my first chapter or whatever, because it was easier to jump right into the meat and then figure out how to start it, like how to get people into. So thinking of different ways like that, sometimes maybe they need to start at the end and work their way backwards. So play around, figure out what works for them. Planning and organization. Oh my goodness. Somebody with executive functioning issue cannot organize. They are going to need lots and lots of help. Things to think about is creating checklists, color coding their school subjects. So the blue notebook is always math. The blue notebook and folder is always math. The red notebook and folder is always English, something like that, so that they know. Having the teacher help you if they're younger, having our schools here always had, if it was on the right hand side, it was stuff that could go home and stay home. If it was on the left hand side, that was things that needed to be done and returned to school. So having things like that, making little notes and things like that, it's going to take a while. Again, you're not there sitting in school with them to help them put it that way, but you can keep just working with them on that, but just trying to find ways to make it a little easier, like writing on the folder, homework here, or something like that. Whatever you need to do to help them. Um, but yeah, color coding is just a great way. And then self monitoring. Again, children with executive functioning issues aren't thinking about what their own behavior does. So create checkpoints. How do they know when they're moving in the right direction? So let's go back to homework. This isn't so much for their behaviors, but for their homework. Let's say um, that they have that they'll get frustrated, and let's say they have a homework sheet of 20 math problems. Have them do 5 and then check in with you. That way they're not repeating the same errors and then having to redo the whole page. you know Let them do 5, tell them to check it over, then have you check it over, so that they're learning how to break things down and review their work, because again, they'll never go back over it. But if you tell them to do all 20 and then have you check it, they'll repeat the same errors, or they'll get frustrated and give up. So break it down into smaller chunks, let them learn how to review their own work. Again, let's say they have to do a writing assignment for school. Tell them, write 1 or 2 paragraphs without editing, and then go back and edit. And then write another couple of paragraphs and then go back and edit. One of the things that'll do is it'll start thinking, they're getting their mind thinking about what are the next steps. And that's something we need to work on with children with executive functioning issues. So those are all just little tips and tricks that you can do. And again, like I said, a lot of these also work with children with autism and children with ADHD. But just trying to make it easier, enlist the school's help. So if you've got teachers, be in communication with those teachers and say, okay, we've got, blue is math, yellow, red is English. Let them know what you're doing so that they can kind of reinforce it there too. If you know your child needs something to occupy their hand, make sure it's okay with the teacher that you send something with them to fidget with, things like that, so that you're working as a team. That alone, a lot of times, can make a huge difference, just working with them. All right, guys, that is it for executive functioning. And we'll be back again next week, and we'll talk about substance abuse. Have a great day.